because we own nothing and need lots of things.
We've just been going to many.
We kind of have options.
We like to have duplicate names. I was thinking about
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Right there.
Then you gotta go.
In the mics now.
Is there more than one?
I appreciate the report back. I appreciate the report
Yeah,
back.
Mike
Okay.
Powers.
Good
Yeah.
information.
Use old Mike.
I like that employee.
Yeah.
Keep asking Bob what I can.
I'm probably
do.
gonna call you Jim
Gemini.
now,
Don't
just
get
for
it.
fun, because I'm good at that. But Patty, let's do this is also a Patty.
A Patty?
Yeah.
Well, then I'll make sure I can remember.
You can remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, overrated.
Oh, the other ones? No, I'll get them. Okay.
Can you grab Nikki's straw too?
So yeah, we will do our very best. I mean, the benefit that you have is like, it's pretty onboarding too, so we'll just wrap you into all of that. Yes, yes. I got her as a confirmed yes, I think. Did you? Yeah.
Leach. L-E-A-C-H. It's two E's, yes. Correct. Yes. Students remember me that way.
Excellent.
Expanding my knowledge of others.
Yeah.
You're hanging out.
Yeah, she's got to do volleyball.
Oh,
Scrimmage thing.
yeah. I thought it's funny. Yes, welcome to the new commute. Running back and forth to UT.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
It's really conditioning, but.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Everybody's doing the carpool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. How's your day?
Yeah. A little quiet. I'm not used to that.
Oh, well, it's been quiet for a great while.
Nelly was all like,
Yeah.
the other day.
Yeah.
I was like, what did you know? I'm like,
Yeah. Driving, doing the drive back and forth.
That's right.
completely new.
Yeah. Hustling to all the baseball games and all the things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, she got me my straw. Thank you. Not official.
Not official.
Where did you guys want me to go? Sit, hang.
I don't know.
Are we gonna swear her in prior to the meeting?
Yes, that's gonna start. That's gonna be the first part. Yeah, there's there. I think there's a few people here. I don't know. I know very little of them. I sat where my name was.
Right.
I'm all excited though, that's why it's softball's downtown.
Is it?
Yeah, they finished last.
We still have playoffs this week and then a tournament in 2 weeks.
I get to go back to play.
There you go. Good trade off season.
Nice to meet you.
We won 13-0, perfect game.
Patty. All right, Patty.
That's her sister on her. And then we only played with one guys.
She's a Patty.
We only played with 10 guys. So I was playing deep short position.
Yeah.
And then certain guys I was.
I sure drove across the street.
I should try making appointments.
I'll text it.
There you go.
I have my phone handy.
Yeah, I guess they're playing up in Tulsa. I'm like, well, it's 4:30, I better stop.
Definitely two different.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess.
It was. Because I got 43rd Street side, I got up to the top, up with the one half. Still got to come up to the rest. Well, that was it.
Obviously.
My luck.
Yes, they're putting, potentially putting a windmill in.
Are you? Yes, you are Ryan. Nice to meet you in person. Officially, I know I've seen you around, but yeah. This is when we do, so the first Monday of every month we are doing workshops, and so when we do workshopping, we'll have this set up, and then for the normal board meetings, we'll have the other shape. Yeah.
So we only had to play with 4 outfielders for one guy. Of course, it's my old buddy. Amazing. I hit it. Kind of like foul forward with it. Okay, it's no ball. It's
Yeah,
60. Did a barrel roll. It stayed on my leg. So I picked it up real quick, before it hit the ground. I was
Nice.
like, what the hell? And then I made it overhead running backwards from being short. Our shortstop, our left center, our left fielder, and me were all coming in the ball and no one was calling it.
Yeah.
So finally I just called it so we didn't have all of us running with each other. And I just stuck my arms out like this and I hit it up pitching. We were like,
Yeah, it's rule I am.
it's just like, settling into his new position.
Ed is just leaving. Audrey. I don't think that he recalls the time it started.
I neglected, but I kind of on purpose did not
Yeah.
send a reminder thinking, okay,
Yeah.
I've been sending stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all still getting in.
Glad to see her.
We're all getting into the rhythm of this meeting, so yeah. Because they'll take our attendance normally, so we're recorded that way for attendance. I saw he was signing up.
So my cousin,
Oh, okay.
my cousin Tim,
Okay.
I got to hear about the shift on Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's both. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, whatever, Tim. And then he's all bragging about how he's going to Hawaii soon. And I'm just sitting there like, you got money to go to Hawaii, but you guys didn't pay my mom and dad for redoing your house. That's wonderful. I'm like, whatever, I got more important things to do. I don't need to go to Hawaii.
Flight's too long.
Yeah. The wife wants to go to Vegas for our 10-year, but now we switched that, so now we're trying to figure out what I want to do for her for our 10-year anniversary this year. So I'm like, we're not going to Vegas. I just don't get money for it
Yeah.
right now. After I dumped everything in the house,
Yeah, for sure.
and then she's making me go on vacation with my family in August. So,
Making.
yeah, it's more or less because Dad won't go without us.
Okay.
And last time we went on a family vacation, it turned into a mess.
Yeah.
And that was when my mom was told about. So we really, last year we had the family get together, so we did, the family trip for Dad's birthday. But we never do the camping trip. Well, now we're doing the camping.
We're trying to arrange a family camping,
Yeah.
getting everybody's schedule. There's
Just right in between the two.
three siblings in the area. Plus their
Yeah.
kids, and I don't know if they were trying to get my other siblings there from Minnesota here, but.
So we usually, if I go anywhere, I'd rather go up with my friends when I think he's on Ashland County. And we get their cabins, we use their pontoon boat, we got like our own private area, we got our own house.
Yeah.
And then we all like make, with their families, we'll make dinners together and stuff, cause we all like family.
Yeah.
And we just walk into their house, it's that kind of place. Well, I hate camping at big family camping places because they pack you inside like sardines.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we're going private.
See, they want to do, my brother's girlfriend is proposing we do tent camping.
Yeah.
We have a camper that we purchased a year ago and have not used yet. So I'm like, if I'm gonna do this, I kind of feel like I want to do it the right way.
Well, that's why I had that 24 camper. No, when I was tired of sleeping on the ground, go up somewhere where it's good. I am not comfortable enough on the couch.
Yeah. Last time we did it, my twins were thunderstorm. It was just, and it was so hot. Tornado sirens were going off. It was an intense camping trip, and it was 10 campers. So we bought the camper so that, because we bought land a couple of years ago on the Pike River, and we haven't used it yet. So we went up last summer, cut down trees so that we could get the camper in there. We still probably have about 6 more trees we need to cut down before we like park the camper up there. But we got electrical installed, so we have that going for us. But
I told you, Nikki, that we got 4 cameras for us to use.
yeah, it's great.
Plus their house. And then we can roll tents if we want.
That's right. Yeah.
And they have enough room for, like, with their brothers-in-laws or whatever coming to town.
Like directly across. Yeah.
Yellow Cross.
Yeah.
She lives on
I
one
should have
side
beat.
of Kent.
Right.
Yeah.
He lives on the other side.
So we're just.
He lives on the other side.
Yeah.
And I live
Yeah.
maybe a half a mile away from him.
Mhm. Yeah. Sometimes Audrey passes me on the way here.
I don't pass you.
No, not. I have had other board members actually pass me on the path. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we're going to the same spot. Then I pull in and they're like,
I'm
oh,
a mile and a half down the road from Chad.
Brand new.
you guys are right near each other.
She's 2
Yeah.
houses away.
Yeah. I mean, Raymond's.
Three times.
That's happened. Take a
All the
little
way
bit.
down.
But it's cute houses.
Yeah, but I'm like
They used to fish their pond. all the time.
3 houses down from Wayne's daughters. And Dawn's right across from us as well. Yeah.
I mean, we're the.
In that cluster.
No. My dad was there when I was born. And then I believe there was first one when I was really little before he got
I heard of it. Probably was still remember it.
I was the last reason that triggered it.
fishing over there and getting real good. Then all of a sudden, we had a guy a few years ago, and our pond died all at the same time.
Yeah, we had a winter that was hard or something.
Who's doing minutes?
Not Nikki.
Nikki's
No.
What?
You do have a recommendation for a new person in that role that's coming this week. So. Her car seemed to find her way here. So.
She got the shape.
But that's not official yet. Yeah, she's had some that, but there's some other specific.
That's gonna know me, because I'm not gonna be on work tomorrow night.
What are you going on tomorrow night?
Elkhart Lake.
Oh. We have
It's that.
round 1 of playoffs tomorrow
Yeah.
in Franklin.
The light is on and so what, there's an
I
issue.
should look at that now.
Us, we're starting to shut it off. So
Nellie's
if you
waiting
do
to
come
get
to,
back.
yeah, so if you do come to a stop, it doesn't power down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, rely on that to restart it.
So tonight's supposed to be like
I
the
need to
approval
trade
of.
it anyway.
Okay.
My husband just said,
And
I think that's
she just got
the
a
icing
message
on the cake.
today. She got to go to Franklin.
Because, you know, at this point it's nickel and diming, you know, it's, I think the
Right.
guy who replaced
She
him
still
was
hasn't heard from her friend yet.
And it's
She
just.
doesn't really want to go back to RUSD, but some of her old principals are at that
Yeah.
school and back there.
Yeah.
No, it's a.
She's like, well, at least it's
Specific
not
company
right
that
now.
has that,
I hope she gets early too.
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know if that's supposed to save gas or.
Live stream still working?
Lecture.
Good. Just glad it's working. The lens cap is off. It's good.
That makes a big difference.
So, your wife's is on Nancy Baker.
Yes.
You guys are still light years ahead of me on that thing.
Your voices last time, it's not maybe your voices, but.
This Patty? She is on the campus. Nikki was in the office, but she's our public.
I drive by that
Yep.
house and my husband says, that's gonna be his house.
Good evening. Welcome to a special board meeting of the Board of Education. Our mission, Raymond School District is dedicated to providing a child-centered learning environment, expecting all students to learn and succeed. We commit to providing and utilizing a progressive, relevant curriculum, encouraging all students to become responsible citizens prepared to meet the challenges of the future. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. This meeting is now called to order. 5:42. Please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Patty, will you do roll call of attendance, please?
Margaret Costage,
Here.
Mike Powers,
Here.
Janelle Wise,
Here.
Ed Robinson.
Here, finally.
I had
Hi.
verification of public notice pursuant to 19.841 Wisconsin statutes.
The agenda's been posted. That's really loud. It's been posted in all the usual spots. All the usual spots.
Talking Andres, yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Starting off just the same.
We move to approving the agenda of this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting approved. We move to the appointment of a new school board member. On 6/27/24, Patty Wren emailed a letter of intent to become the new school board member, filling Amanda Falashi's vacancy. She will serve, if nominated and elected, or appointed, until April of 2025. With that, I look for a nomination.
I'll nominate Patty Run for filling the vacancy of Amanda Flashy.
I'll second.
So we have a nomination to appoint Patty Wren and a second. Roll call?
Margaret Costage,
Yes.
Mike Powers,
Yes.
Janelle Wise,
Yes.
Ed Robinson.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, Patty. You'll now have the oath of office. And Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki, for coming back for the victory tour here while you're
Yes.
helping us out.
Do you understand? Do you understand? She can, yeah.
Do a little dance.
Now they're
Nice picture. I know. Usually they never turn on that.
All right, so you're gonna raise your right hand. You're gonna repeat after me. I, Patricia Wren,
I, Patricia Brad,
having been elected or appointed
having been elected or appointed
to the office of school board member of Raymond Number 14 School District,
to the office of school board member of Raymond Number 14 School District,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof, swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
but I have not yet entered upon the duties thereof, swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State state of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Now we can say welcome, Patty.
Okay. Welcome, Pat.
And you flip your name tag.
Pardon me?
She
I
can
can,
flip
I can put that up. Another name tag? There we go.
I got a name tag as well, so.
Yeah.
Wow. You guys got one right here.
Yeah.
Very good.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah.
At this time, we move to board reorganization, and we will turn this over to Mike.
Well, there's no longer any pecking order here to our board. We have to reassign the roles and duties with a new member on the board. So welcome, Patty. Thanks for signing up, and glad to have you on the team. We will go through the process of nomination similar to what we did in April, in the alignment with the normal timeline. Whenever you have a changeover, boards have the ability to reassign people to new roles. So what we're looking for at this time is the role of president. So looking for a nomination for board president, and then that would have a call out of repeated request. So we say it twice. It's sort of that funny, any other takers moment. So we're looking for a nomination for board president of the Raymond School District Board.
I nominate Audrey Passage as board president for Raymond School Board.
I'll second.
Any other nominations? Any other nominations? So it has been moved and seconded that Audrey Gossage be board president at this time. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Nay. Motion carries unanimously. At this time, I'd like to turn over the board to our board president,
Okay.
Audrey Gossage.
Okay.
I'm back. Okay, next we move to the position of vice president. And is there a nomination?
Nominate Janelle Wise, Vice President.
I second that.
We have a nomination for Janelle Wise to be vice president and a second. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Yeah? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Janelle is our vice president. Next, we move to treasurer.
I'll nominate Ed Robinson as treasurer.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion for Ed Robinson to be the treasurer and a second to that motion. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ed Robinson is our treasurer. Next, we move to clerk. Do we have a nomination for clerk?
What do you think about it, Patty?
Right.
Yeah, right.
No takers. And some paperwork involved, but fairly guided.
Well, then I nominate Patty Wren for clerk.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to nominate Patty Wren as the clerk. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations?
So we have a deputy clerk role as well, and at this time, that person is being secured, like, we hope to sign the contract tomorrow for your replacement, Nikki. It can't be you anymore unless you'd like to be, I suppose. But, we will have to make a recommendation for that at the next board meeting when the person is officially on staff. But that would typically go to the district administrative assistant in this case. But our last one quit, so. But she's here tonight, she can't give up.
That's good. Can't leave it.
So next month we'll have to fill deputy clerk.
Okay. On the agenda. So that concludes our agenda for the evening. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to
Second,
adjourn.
we're going to Ed.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
And I want to point out, we do have a board retreat that is following, not board retreat, sorry. A board workshop that is immediately following this. We'll take a 5-minute break to switch gears. I'll get the new presentation information up, and we'll meet back here. Right now, it's 5:53. We'll start 5:58, 5 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
Yep.
Really? You know, that,
Nice and small. It's small fun.
I had no policy of wearing them because they were wearing them out in the shop.
Sure.
I thought I would share it, maybe with Pat or sure.
Absolutely.
Now, those are,
We should have a separate.
they're good things. They're good for your hands.
Yeah,
So maybe you
yeah.
can just get them away from the workplace.
Got a 1 hour or something.
Still. Man, their phone is in my opinion, that should be enough.
Thank you. I didn't have any paperwork on the stuff.
Yeah, I did, and you know, after you said that, I thought, oh, I should go grab that and bring it. I can't find it. So I'm thinking maybe I took it to work with me, because I
Yeah.
had more time to
Right.
look at stuff and fill it out, because it was a,
Yeah,
well, if you saw it.
I didn't see it. I only got those 3 pictures of it.
Yeah, and
And
it's.
somebody was having to ask me about it. They're like, hey, you know, what do you think of the Union Grove referendum? What are your thoughts on it? I'm like, I don't know anything about it. She said, tell me. And so then he pulled some screen or some like pictures of it that he had, and that's why I was like,
Yeah, they want to reroute the driveways, because kids that drive now, and drop off and pick up.
and they want to buy land, and they want to redo the field, and they want to connect the egg building to the main building. And then I think there was some like ADA, like just general building maintenance, but 34.9 million for 20 years. For 20, it's $54 for $100,000 home renovation.
Hi.
You know, it doesn't matter what community it is.
Come on.
I guess what I had heard was that somebody was like, hey, how do we drum up support in Raymond? I don't know, start by saying, how would you mean? Drum up support. Yeah, the Union Grove. Like, we knew that there was coming.
Starting to
but
say,
there wasn't
the
anything.
accuracy is
I've been told
make sure you
I don't see it.
I got a bunch of stuff for the ones that were going in Waterford, not even Waterford district.
That's the third.
I'm Brian with the Journal. Just one quick question for the opening. Was she only applicants or how many applicants? Okay. So then,
No, I don't know why they
she had 27, you said?
Yeah. No, this one.
Was it posted on the calendar?
No. So that's something
Mike's fine, he's having trouble.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. It was the first week.
Oh, okay, so, broke up.
Where we shoot? Learning curve.
Oh,
Yeah.
Really? All right.
Holiday and then it's hurting the.
Yeah.
Especially at 4.
Yeah. It's good to hear.
Really?
Yeah, and we talked more fall, late summer, yeah, something like that. Yeah, workshop.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
Sounds
good to see
good.
you.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
I gotcha.
So I won't get out of there until like 6:30, an hour.
Yeah, and then it's a long drive.
It's an hour, hour and a half.
Yeah.
We're ready to start.
So that's why I'm like, if I can get out of there.
Okay, we're gonna start our school board workshop, and I am going to turn this over to our leader, Mike.
Here I am.
Hey, Mike.
I'm on day 4. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. It's been great. It's kind of nice when you nestle a holiday into your first work week. So that's always good. But that's how I like to work. Just 3-day weeks, just consolidated schedule. So
Yeah.
we are moving to a workshop model. When we met in our retreat on May 11th, we had conversations about expanding the board's role in learning and understanding all the things that it is that are going on here at Raymond, and how do you do that in a fashion that's timely, meaningful, and can break things down into chunks that are palatable and easy to understand. So once a month, I think we decided first and third are our meetings. This is different because the first day on the job was last week Monday. I didn't think that appropriate to step in to that during a holiday week, so this is a little different post. This on the 8th normally would have been the first and third. So the first will be a workshop in each month. It'll be posted just like this one was posted, and really it's for your information. So in the future, very near here, we have a lot of referendum conversations, and we have other conversations about enrollment and things you want to learn more about that I think are important because you're going to be voting and having action on that, representing the community and your concerns within the community as it relates to school. So this is really an open dialogue in public view, so that we have the opportunity to have discussions and you get a chance to share your questions or feedback or thinking that you may have. There is no action taken at this meeting, so we are, whenever we get together and there's all of you at the table, we've got to notify the public that there's a quorum present, although no action will be taken. So that's why we sit here tonight. We'll try to keep these to 5 to 6 hours long. I'm just kidding. We'll try to keep these to an hour, but because again, if it can't be taught in an hour or learned in an hour and then followed up on if need be, then it's a lot to chew on sometimes. So tonight there's a couple of topics, and they're all related to our board May 11th retreat that we had in this very room at this very cluster of tables, and we had a chance to talk about my role and your role and relating it to our mission, our core values, and things like that. So we felt like it'd be prudent to have this as a first agenda item to talk about where we sit within those topics. So our guidance from the WASBA organization, which did a great job. I mean, I think they chose the right superintendent. I'm a little biased. But, the reality is they helped us with the discussions here as it relates to how we function as a board. And so these are general guidelines, and so this document right now will be added to as we speak. It is a live document, so I can alter it, and then this will be available to our board, to our public, because this is sort of like our mode of operation we're agreeing to today. So the goal is to get through these things and have discussion, and then obviously we can always follow up and amend if we need to. But what I've shared here with you are examples and some language that has been currently used and recommended by different organizations. So WASBA, in the case of the first section of how do we function, those are the recommended functions. We reviewed that on May 11th. That may look familiar to you, some of those statements. It wouldn't look familiar to you, Patty, because tonight's your first dance. So, but the idea here is that we represent, what it is the board is looking to do and work through. And then we're gonna talk about our mission statement and just try to analyze a little bit of that statement and tie it back to our core values. What we're gonna be doing at the end of my first year, so toward the end of my first time, sitting through a full school year, and hopefully there's many, many after that, but the reality is we will engage in strategic planning toward the end of that year. So I want to get here and sit, and I want to learn, and I want to hear people share their ideas and thoughts, get staff's input, learn and see students and families, get family input, community input, and then start the process to our strategic plan, which would be a 3 to 5 year process, a document that looks at our future and says, where do we want to be in 3 years or up to 5? And so that's sort of one of those documents that changes with time too. That won't happen out of the gate, so that's going to be work that some of this work helps to get started for us. And we have a mission statement, it's working at this point. A lot of times you start ground up and the board has a discussion about, is this the mission, is this the vision, are these the values that we have as an organization? And those are important conversations to have. And there's input from the community that we'll solicit along the way as well. That's not happening tonight, but that's a forecast of what is to come in the spring, if that makes sense. So as a board, we've talked about your roles, my role, our role in pushing this thing called school in a direction that makes sense and is moving forward. So how do we function? So our norms are really the way we want to represent our work. Our norms are set by our staff. They're going to be set in a few months. Our admin team met today for a retreat this morning here on campus and just talked through what are the norms for faculty. What are the norms for the board in the same right? What are the rules? How do we operate as an organization? These are just some of the basic rules that have existed in other places I've been. And also this is the list that was shared from WASBA. So if you want to take a minute and just peruse those again, those were something we did take a look at on the 11th. And again, Patty, first time you're seeing them, but I think you can do your own investigation. So first one is keep teaching and learning as the focus of our work. Second one is value, respect, and support public education. The third one is modeling good learning, practice professional development. That means for you all, learning just like this and attending resource workshops that are put on by the different organizations, WASBA and the like, to help you grow your capacity as a board. I will also be attending and joining, I've joined WASDA, which is my version of your WASBA. There's lots of acronyms here. And those organizations are very good resources for giving you professional standards for operating as a board, as well as me as a district administrator or superintendent. Excuse me. We need to respect differences between district governance and management. One of the things we talked about on the 11th was understanding the role of board members, and that any one individual doesn't necessarily have the power, but the group here is where the collective comes in decision-making for the organization. And we don't want to get to a spot, at least I would appreciate it, if we don't get to the spot where micromanagement becomes the day. So if someone comes to you as a board member, you can say, this is something I'll take back to the general discussion, but it's something that I can listen to, but I can't really say a whole lot about, because at the same time, that's not your role. And so understanding your role, my role, how I fit into this picture is really important. So management versus governance. And then recognizing and respecting differences amongst students, staff, parents, and the greater community. That's huge, because obviously we have people with opinions, we have people with thoughts, and the one uniqueness to all the things I've heard in my short time here at Raymond is that everybody, I can't say everybody loves Raymond, that's sort of a TV show, but everybody loves Raymond, and a lot of people have different versions of what that love is, or they have different versions of what they have for a vision for that. But at the end of the day, that's what comes out of all the discussions, is they want this place to stay open, thrive, and be good for kids. And I'm an open door. So if people want to come to me and talk, I'm here to listen. I represent a different voice in the room. I'm still the new guy, and I can say that for about a year. And then after that, I'm not the new guy anymore. So again, that's an important piece to recognize and respect those differences. Operating with trust and integrity to maximize resources to reach fullest potential. That's a big one. We've got to use resources. We know we're facing some budget, not some, pretty big budget issues. We are not alone. Yes, Raymond has their story. We have our history recent history, which has some question marks and some things that we're working through that are not our best version of budget and best version of what we're sitting with money with. However, we are not alone. 91 school districts went to referendum last time around. We anticipate well over 100 this time. I have not looked recently at the Baird financial site that states all the districts that are preparing paperwork, but just read your headlines. There's a lot. And that points to a bigger problem, which is a funding issue. But then also the resources we do have in pocket here, how do we manage those as effectively as possible and as transparently as possible so that we feel like we know what we have in our hoppers, we know what we have for our capital improvements, we know what we have for our operating, and it's not just relying on a referendum to tell our story or give us approval of whether or not we exist, in a year or two. So that's gonna be the work of the board for sure. You're gonna learn a lot pretty quickly here about, Finance 101. We will have several Finance 101 workshops as we go through this in the coming weeks. I am meeting with, on Thursday, with Elise. Patty and I are meeting with Elise from Baird, and starting some of that initial work around, the branding, the understanding, and the numbers, and the needs that we have. I've already been a part of the conversation since April, so this isn't my first dance with conversations with Elise, but really targeting that time, and then scheduling a set meeting. Next month, mark my words, part of this learning will be financial. A lot of the learning we're gonna do this fall is financial, because that is our most nearest and dearest issue right now as it sits. And then last one, keep confidential matters confidential. That is your board role. It's hard in a small community where everybody knows everybody, and there's care, and there's stories, and there's history, and come on, it's just Ed. Yeah. But the reality is, you gotta be confidential about the things that are going on here, especially when it involves, all those confidential topics, families, kids, our community, because how we function really matters, and that integrity is really important. So those are the recommended norms. What are your thoughts on those? How do those hit? Do those make sense? Is it reasonable? Are we asking you to do something you couldn't agree to?
Everything sounds good so far.
Any discussion?
Good foundation.
Typically, these are reviewed as part of the opening statement for the board. So if we're saying we're gonna do these things, then it's a matter of then what do those look like, sound like, appear like, in practice. So we can certainly have those out in front and articulate those, kind of like when you read the mission. We also read our norms because this is how we function. Anyone have anything they want to add to those? Sometimes you see starting and ending on time, which tonight we would have broken that norm by about 10, 12 minutes. The reality is sometimes time is mentioned in there, sometimes it's not, because, is that a value that, we really want to put out there as a number one norm, or is it one we try to live by, but certainly can add to the norms. There's no rule that says we can't add or take away if we feel like these are things that are not manageable.
Would fiscal responsibility be a bullet point under this, or would that be under goals for our work?
I think you could put, under norms, kind of how we function as a board.
Yeah.
I think values would speak to that, and we'll
Okay.
talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
How we function as a board really is keeping the open mind. Those are the human behaviors.
Okay.
But the
Right.
concept of
Got it.
fiscal responsibility, I think absolutely has to be part of our work. So, hearing no strong objections to it, we'll adopt these for now. And obviously we can go on and as you sit at home and read through these one more time at your leisure, feel free to add to these conversations, and if these are ever adjusted, we would like to have a motion to adjust the norm, so it's a public action and you can see, because obviously we're trying to set these in. So what I'd ask for right now, and we can't make motion at this meeting, is that at the next meeting, we would adopt the norms. So we're giving it some time to sit and marinate, and then we would adopt the norms as written at that next meeting. The second meeting of the month will become a more actionable, that's our action-based meeting, so that would definitely be where things get voted upon and approved, denied, discussed, all those good things. Okay. In terms of the second piece, our core purpose is our mission. And our mission exists. I am not gonna come in as the new superintendent and say this mission is good, bad, or otherwise. It is what's in place. I would anticipate that as we get closer to, our strategic planning process, we will definitely be vetting and looking at all the elements related to this. I can tell you, looking at it right now, it's wonderful, but long. And so oftentimes you see these in a little shorter stance, but I don't want to insult the work of the past. This was put down on paper for a reason. It does have meaning. But I think whenever you wordsmith, and there's people in the room here that are better wordsmiths than I think it's really important for us to look at each of the weights of the words and really that they have impact and meaning. But that said, when you look at the mission, what's in a word? So looking at the various words in our mission, what are the words that you see that kind of stick out? Just taking a cursory look at that.
Child-centered learning, learn and succeed, progressive relevant curriculum,
Expecting all students.
Mhm.
responsible citizens.
This is the ultimate public typing. All students, okay? Responsible citizens.
I mean, I think that nod to the future is also important.
Responsible citizens.
Mhm.
Love that.
So as you look at these words, these phrases, I think it's important that, does that capture all that we embody? Is this showing up in our actions, in our agendas, in our work daily? Our leadership team today kind of admitted vulnerably that we have this, but sometimes it doesn't come front and center. And sometimes it's not necessarily, broadcast on everything we do. The reality is, we need to be, everything needs to be kid-centered, everything needs to be about all students, and this community has to move forward with, great learning that helps all kids to reach their fullest potential. So I would imagine that this year we'll dive in deeper to this, and while this is something the board is aware of and has a hand in, inevitably you would approve it. We definitely want to have collective inquiry into this and collective work that goes in. The collaboration around looking at that particular statement is really important, because that, to me, that's the core of why we're sitting here. And again, I can share with you thousands of these that are longer and thousands that are shorter.
Yep.
We got to figure out what ours looks like. And anyone that's worked in business knows there's got to be that clear mission that then leads to a clear galvanized vision. Because without those, it's kind of hard to, keep everybody moving in the same direction. So it doesn't mean that we're rudderless at this point. I feel like the fact is there's a ton of really good things going on at Raymond. How do we capture all those in that statement, though? So just putting that out in front. And then here's an example of the core value list from a district that I know pretty well, the one that I came from. And this is one that I think I've always respected this list, and ironically the number one thing is respect, because it's simple and clear. So what I ask for the board is, when we think about our core values, and these are our words and actions that guide us toward that mission, do these things align with our current mission? Or obviously we're writing it to a mission that we think will probably have some amendment at some point, but what are those core values that you think we need to have in our midst? And this is where, Ed, you would maybe have that fiscal responsibility in our midst. And you'll notice on the bottom, strategic goals, the efficient and effective use of resources is kind of the you can capture on one for that. But thoughts about our core values?
I really like that integrity. I really want to get that involved kind of in ours somehow. Because it doesn't really seem like we have, we have things kind of going towards that, but it doesn't have nothing specifically in there, about integrity and living up to your word.
And we did some work with this in the community I came from, just because they wanted to know, you say the word, what does that mean? Was the big piece. When you say respect, and then they have that simple statement after it, treat others as you want to be treated. Respect means something related but a little bit different. Or core responsibility, take ownership of your actions. What does that mean? What does responsibility mean to our board? So, thoughts, or are there other words? And again, this is something where I feel like we're starting the discussion. It doesn't mean in the next 15 minutes, we're gonna sit here and create an amazing
Right.
list of those words, but I think it's something to really start considering.
That's a good start. Pretty much covered everything,
Mm-hmm.
very much. All right.
So, when it comes to this, what I'd ask the board to do, and you can certainly provide me with your input as you have more time to take a look and think through. What I would look for is, we have 3 to 5, maybe 6, in this case there's 6, but 3 to 5 of those core values that we try to emphasize in our work as we push through things. It's really important that we articulate those things. Okay? So again, I'll reach out to you and we'll have conversations. As I'm onboarding, I'm meeting with each of the board members and, like I said before, anybody else who wants to talk through some pieces, and this is one of those that I think we'll definitely be hitting in our conversations individually, because I feel like this is important to understand where you're coming at your role as a board member and where the district needs you to perform, really, quite frankly. There's my Jim Hayden. Quite frankly, it's as, perform as we need to, so. And all of those things then, so we have our core values, our mission, and those all lead to that vision. And again, this vision is one that other districts have put in place. This particular example is to pursue excellence at all levels in the district. So whatever we're doing, that vision is really where we're shooting for, is that excellence factor. When we make decisions, we want our kids to leave Raymond and be the best example of themselves for wherever they're going to high school, maybe Union Grove or other places. So those are all pieces that we're going to be working towards over the coming months, because again, this is important work. The board needs to be at the front of this work, understanding it, and then, like I said before, what does it look like, sound like, feel like when we're in meetings? Those are all the pieces that are important to work through as a board. And then, talking about goals, one of the pieces that I wanted to point out is that our board needs to have goals. And I need to have goals. Our staff all have goals. And this year and other years, staff have had their student learning outcomes, the SLOs, they've had PPGs, personal, professional goals. They have goals that they have to give us as part of their evaluation model. And they will be having those again this year. So this is one of those top-down. The whole organization has something that they're striving for as they work through the school year. And so these are the things that stood out in other places that I put down as some suggestions. Having a culture of integrity and high expectations. Again, the strategic goal is that we're trying to always make sure that whatever we do has an integrity and high expectation. Whatever we do is efficient and effective use of resources, which would be the referendum as an example of what falls under that one, as well as our fiscal management. Academic excellence, it's critical that Dana have a hand, Dana Marty, our curriculum and reading person, be able to work through what that looks like and building leadership as well with Mrs. Brockman, who's our new administrator, being able to work with her to have an understanding of what academic excellence looks like. And then community and school pride. I've noticed there is quite a bit of community and school pride here. And people want to have that engagement, and people want to feel proud about their school. They want to feel good about their school. They want to feel like it's taking the kids where they need to go, wherever that is in their educational journey. So those are examples of strategic goals. Now, those don't have metrics attached to them. Those. At some point, you drill into heavy metrics. And so these are just guiding goals that boards have used in the past that I feel like were a good example. Again, we can get down to the level of granular and have that measured somehow. I think for the most part, you've got to just be cautious as to how much you dig into the measurements, but I feel like you can have a measurement that shows success over time. So those would be goals for the Board of Education that I'd like to have the board consider, is that when you're doing things and you're working through your normal cadence of boardsmanship, and engaging as a board member, these are the things you consider as those goals to move forward. And then for me, what I'm looking to for my 3 goals, and there could be more, obviously I don't wanna have too many more, because it's hard to have a lot of goals. But number 1 for me is establishing developing a trusting relationship across the organization by being visible, approachable, and gathering perspectives throughout the year. So my job this first year is to get to know people, figure out where they're coming from, figure out their roles, responsibilities, how they fit in, what the value is that they have for Raymond, what the value is that they would like to see in Raymond, their ideas, thoughts, cares, current concerns. That's my job. How do I measure that? I can easily account for that on calendar invites. I can easily account for that on just points of touch with people to say, hey, we're having a community picnic, which we are having, by the way, and we're gonna have to talk about grilling out a lot of cheeseburgers, so hopefully you can bring your aprons. And we have lots of help in the audience here that can help us with that. We are setting a date, hopefully for that as well, soon. But from having a community picnic to having other opportunities for people to come in and talk about the referendum. I will be setting open office hours. I will be heading out of the community to whatever little shop will have me. And if you feel more comfortable talking to the superintendent at work, I'll come to your work and talk with you. We've got to build people's understanding of why and how this referendum is going to be working with our community, because there's got to be trust built. There's a lot of trust issues right now in the community, and they're understandable. Because, here we sit, and we've had the year we had, and now we're asking for money. And there's got to be an understanding of why and how that all works. So part of that's the board's job at various things, and part of that is my job, to be able to say, here's the information, here's how it looks and feels, and why we're sitting where we're sitting. And, my role is to provide information, and give people as clear a picture as I can as to why we need to keep Raymond open and relevant and thriving. So that'll be my first goal. Big one. Focus on the systems and development and clarity of our system. We have some needs. We have some HR needs. Patty is wonderful. Patty should not be HR only. Patty does a lot of things here. And so, human resources, providing humans support they need, especially adults, professionals, is hard. And I don't know if you've been, keeping up with employment these days. It's hard to retain employees, to attract employees. And so we've got to come up with some strategies around HR. Our handbook has got to be updated and collaborative with teacher input, with staff input, with, not necessarily family input, but they can articulate some of the concerns they have that maybe are impacted by the handbook. We are looking to do some collaborative calendar creation as we build our school calendar. There's lots of things we'd like to engage our public and our families in to a point. Unfortunately, we can't plan around everyone's personal vacations, but the reality is there's a process you can use to engage your public as well as your faculty that's really important for the HR and the handbook side of things. And then professional development, we've got to focus on training our teachers. There's a lot of stuff that teachers have to do. There's a lot of responsibilities and elements, those responsibilities that you as the board are signing off on as treasurer, right? We're writing big checks out to, for the purpose of training teachers. And so what's the return on those things? And making sure that we have a system for that. And then educator effectiveness. So working with all of our educators to make sure that we are, attracting, retaining, and supporting the best teachers moving forward. And part of educator effectiveness is giving teachers feedback so that they can continue to grow and get better at their craft. And not just teachers. Every single employee in the organization, top down, has to have feedback. It has to be evaluated consistently. And so part of that is the HR, and part of that is just, I think, best practice. So those are pieces that I'll be working on as well with our staff, with our administrative team, and our faculty this year. And then lastly, I mentioned at the start, we have to create a long-term strategic plan that includes facilities and financial plans. That will be created this year. And it's unfortunate that we're kind of building the boat as we're sailing it when it comes to referendum's gonna come in November. We should have some things in place and an idea of some of those needs, fiscally, but we're still gonna take the time this year to make sure we have it right, and that we have the right list of things and the right, strategy around our saving and the right strategy around our fiscal management. So it's hard when you're asking for, at the same time you're working through this understanding of how finances work, and you're asking for revenue from the community. So it's challenging. So those are the 3 goals that I'd like to focus on within my evaluation as superintendent. There are many, many others I'm sure that could go through your mind. So again, tonight was really meant to put this in your wheelhouse, into your thoughts. And again, we can talk about my evaluation, and all of these things are typically done, my evaluation is done in closed session, because of the confidential nature of the feedback given. But it's one of those things where I feel like publicly saying there's a system we're creating here is important. So that people know that there's accountability to my job and there's accountability to yours. So, and there's enough opportunities for feedback to be given from the community to our board. And obviously those avenues are still gonna be in place. So the ability for people to give you feedback is there. But then obviously we'll also in closed session have discussion of where we are within our board goals. So that was really the thought of tonight, was to have a conversation early in the process. Again, day 4 for me, to put some of these pieces out in front. So establishing norms, examining that mission, putting together our heads and saying, okay, does the mission right now work? I think it does. There's still work to be done there. And then how does that fold into those core values? And how does that relate to our own goals? That's kind of the sequence of tonight's discussion. So I presented a lot. What are the thoughts?
Sounds good. I like the goals, not only for the board, but also for yourself that you set. I think that's a really good idea, and it kind of is breaking that iceberg a little bit, that's been coming at us, to kind of start showing that, we're trying to make goals, we're trying to make improvements, we're trying to do this, and we'll see how it is. Like you say, after this first year, it's really gonna be like, hey, this is what's going on, now we kind of know, now we can really buckle down. I think that's really good.
I think there's a lot to take in. I think understanding, kind of from us, with this being our first glance at the sheet in this format and all those things, I think there's a lot to chew on here.
Yep.
And take in and just think through. What are your thoughts on next steps? Is this something we're like at the next board meeting, or over time, in the next 60, 90, 120 days, we start finalizing some of this stuff, but like, what is that?
I had
thought
committed
process?
a 90-day, plan was part of my interview process.
Yeah.
Right here in this very room, I got recorded,
Yes.
it's great. And I'm being recorded again, it's awesome, it's all live. So the reality is, I would say, within 90 days, we wanna have a lot of this stuff galvanized and in place. To me, looking at, for example, at the next board meeting, the norms, locking those in, making sure we're clear on that. And then as we work with our mission, saying, okay, what does that look like for implementation this year? Staff getting reinstituted to this in August, having these conversations as a faculty is really important, so that they understand, what it is, again, we're working towards. Having this front and center for them, the mission, and then continuing with the core value discussions. So I would imagine 90 days out from now would be fall. School has started, by October, we've got an idea of what these things are. We'll have a much better sense at that time of the exact approach for the referendum in terms of, our community's thoughts around it.
So are you saying then, if I repeat what I heard earlier, the mission statement, you're saying, like, let's just sit on that for a year and we stay anchored on that? So we're not talking about redoing anything with mission statement, correct?
I'm putting it out that I'm not coming in
You
here.
had your way,
and
right, like, that's
weekend.
what you're recommending, is that?
I think it's got some room for improvement,
Yeah,
but
Well,
I think,
but you wanna learn
I think he's
about
saying
it and,
in 90 days, we'll lock this all in.
yes,
Everything is open to change or recommendations or whatever, but at 90 days, lock it down, this is what we work towards.
I hear you,
think
I'm
that-
just trying to understand if we're going off of the basis of the mission statement, if your recommendation is somewhat that we're staying within the same, because the
Yes.
mission statement to tackle something like that,
Right.
to your earlier point, is a pretty big undertaking with a lot of input that we're
Correct.
looking to have.
Correct.
I guess in the way that we've previously, and I think during your interview process, you had said, I think we talked about the mission statement, like, what do you think, and how would you go about building one of those, and you said with community, that's a lot of work.
Yep.
So if the idea is that work happens though over a year, and then
Yes.
the things that we have here with the values and board goals, we can still work through those right now to align to our current mission statement, but
Correct.
it will just somewhat
Morph.
morph over time.
Yes.
I'm just trying to understand like what foundation we're working off
Yes,
of, because
foundation is
90
that-
days is really aggressive to
We are,
like
we are locked in for this mission.
redo a mission statement and then,
We're
okay.
locked into this mission for the year.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay.
Because there's no point in us moving the target and trying to have.
So given that that's
you know,
sitting where it is, so then the
Right.
things that we need to finalize are then the next three buckets here. What are our values?
Right.
What are strategic goals? What are your goals, right?
Mhm.
Yep, and any input that we have based on what you kind of came up with here.
Right.
So you're asking then in the values, but like, it's not that you're saying, hey, go for all 6 of these, it's the, let's simplify the list, here are some good ones that I've seen out there, are there other
Correct.
ones that are missing? And we can kind of just noodle on that. I like to understand the assignment, sorry for all
Yes.
my questions, and making
It's an
sure.
appropriate summary. I think this is why we're having the
Yeah, for
discussion
sure.
now.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, there's a lot to chew on here.
Yeah.
And it is not for me to come in here and say, yep, we're blowing it all
Yeah.
up, this thing's, no, there's
Completely.
a lot of good,
Yeah,
grounded stuff here that is, obviously, there was someone that got together and created this
Right.
mission.
right,
And someone got together in the community and said, these are words that are important to us.
right.
Now, how do we articulate what the values are from this board and within the community?
How it aligns
say,
to all of that. It needs
how
to
does it all
match.
align?
Yeah,
Yep.
Yep,
And
okay,
so I think having a starting point for us to say, this is how the year ended, at the end of this year, these are our values, here's our mission currently, and then diving into that work as
Yeah.
the year wraps with surveying, focus groups, discussion,
Completely.
all those pieces that I think are important. That'll all happen in that March, April, May
Yeah.
timeline, so that by June of next year, we've got, a fully functioning
Mhm.
version of our mission, vision, values, core, but we've gotta lock this document in the next 90 days.
yeah, yeah, makes sense.
So, our next workshop, obviously, will be in August, right? So you wanna have this locked in by the end of August, or first of September?
I would say probably by the first meeting in October, so we have,
Okay, so
we have
then
July,
here's my-
August, September, so 90 days.
So, at our workshops, this first one of the month, you're gonna have different topics for each one of those workshops. And I get it, that's good, but maybe the first 10, 15 minutes, it gives us an opportunity to look at this, review it, discuss it, chew it up, spit out whatever we want,
Right.
and continue on that for 10 or 15 minutes,
Yep.
beginning of each workshop, and then say, okay, we're done.
Yes.
I think
So
that,
between workshops,
or any,
there's
at any
thinking,
point.
there's reflection,
Yeah.
there's conversation, there's,
Right.
here's what I'm thinking about, write some notes down. Next
Right.
time we get together, 10 minutes on, hey, where are we with this? Are we comfortable locking in, at next week's board meeting, are we comfortable locking in on the norms? Maybe.
Well, and we can discuss some of it during the board meetings as well,
Sure.
if one of them comes up if it's an agenda item, right? And
Right.
we think we're ready, just because we think we're ready, it doesn't mean we can't still have discussion and postpone it, right? So there
Correct.
might be a little bit of,
There's no race to this.
Queuing,
This is
yeah,
a matter of
let's-
making
yeah.
sure we have, because again, the board is only one factor.
Yep.
It's an important factor, but there's lots of important factors. You gotta have faculty on board with this. You gotta have families on board with this. You gotta have people understanding the direction of things overall before action takes.
So are we taking action on this once it's done, you think?
I think eventually you would make a move to adopt the
Become-
mission, you'd make a move to adopt our core values. So this would start to become website material. People are shopping districts and they see, hey, this is what they value at Raymond, they value X, Y, Z, their mission is here. And some people eat that stuff up and love it, others don't even know we have a mission.
yeah.
It
I
depends on
love to have something that we can go back to, point to that, again, how do you have accountability? How do you have so many things if you have nothing written down anywhere? So I like going through that exercise. I also think that some of this might translate into us reviewing our board policies and making it an expectation that there are these elements established on or reviewed on some sort of cadence or something like that. Because, like you said, times are changing quite fast and pretty regularly where to like just do this, go through this work and set it on a shelf does nobody any good, right? So,
Right. And where I've come from, the last two districts started every single meeting by reading this.
yeah,
The core values, the strategic goals is read out loud. One of you gets that torch every time, and they love it. It takes about 30 seconds to a minute to read through and kind of say, this is where remember, this is sort of like our North Star. This is where we're going with this. And that's how they start each of their meetings, and then they roll into their normal
are we
agenda.
talking about maybe even getting something printed or put on the wall if we didn't want to do
It'd be nice. I've never gone to a district where it wasn't written somewhere.
Right,
I think it's probably going to be good wall material. We're also looking at things like our layout of board meetings and how
Yeah.
we do this. And this format, I think, is nice, and making it, reasonable and reflective, and having things, transparently showcased is important. These are all pieces to the puzzle. So it starts with this discussion here with our, mission, vision, values, core values, and then moves into more actionable discussion in future meetings.
have you seen like leadership behaviors used in any district? So this is the like, here's our mission, here's what our core values are and what we strive for. But here as leaders, as there are many leaders in the school environment, like here are the behaviors that we look to all reflect to help achieve and support the values that we have here.
I could look into that. I mean, certainly there's lots of different, iterations of this. Usually this appears in staff handbook and website and other places, so it's fairly easy to find. I can certainly do a little reconnaissance.
Okay.
So we have a mission statement, and all the time that I've been on the board, do we have a vision statement?
I have not located it, but I have.
Do you know?
It doesn't mean we don't have one. So I don't think we do, from what I'm hearing from people, but I've been here 4 days.
Yeah.
So I'm not aware of one. But again, that may be something that's somewhere, and there are people in this room who have been around for a while, maybe it exists in some of the work they've done. It'd be great if they could point me in that direction, but that's part of the residual of this, is that there's something that comes out of that
Right.
mission statement.
My first reaction to this is there's nothing that's like a red flag. It all seems common sense and instruction.
Sure. Well, and I'm big on artifacts and anchor documents, so like if you,
Yeah.
when things are kind of like, man, what are we doing? Let's go back to
We'll
our,
point back to,
go back to this. Where are we sitting within this document? Is it fitting within our discussion points that we had taken time to discuss? If it was important enough to talk about now, it must be important enough to write down, and then we can hold that as one of our accountability tools, so.
Yeah, yeah, I know, I mean, and you used these words a couple of times, and I know when we previously talked about some district goals, we talked about things like attracting and retaining quality staff, which, again, you said multiple times, but like, is that something, like, if we're not focused on that, some of these other things are really hard to achieve, right? And so, like, should that be something that we specifically call out on paper?
Yeah.
When you think of the, like, again, I think to Patty's point, a lot of these are like solid foundational common sense sort of things to have on paper. When you look at the uniqueness of what our district has been going through, like what are any specific opportunities that we have because of that, the last year or so that we've had, right? And I think still hearing, opportunities, even though we had a workshop, though very lightly attended last month, that covered this topic specifically, but the understanding of how and what the board does, I think even continuing to make sure that parents understand their role and what escalations look like within the district. I think there's a lot of things that we need to do around the education of like, who is a primary point of contact when this situation comes up. So
Sure.
I don't know how those fit in those papers. Those are just as I was thinking through like some of the unique
Well,
things.
yeah.
That's my like first reaction, I guess I would say, to taking in some of this.
And know that we are also working as a leadership team to answer some of those same questions, because
Yeah.
staff are wondering, you know,
Completely.
who is my direct report,
Yeah.
who approves this, who takes care of that? Because in the absence of those things in the recent past, because roles were shifting or changing, or,
Yeah.
you know, things changed, all of a sudden there's confusion, there's a little bit of chaos,
Yeah.
a little bit of unknown, and it's not a great place to be. So we've got to stabilize that factor for faculty by articulating, okay, who does what and why.
Yeah.
So we're working through that. We started today, and we had to stop ourselves after 5 hours because we needed a break.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is important work, because this is the kind of work that when you go to your public and then you're starting to ask for resources, they'll put their money behind it, but they gotta know what they're putting their money behind, and their direction something's moving.
I think we should look at the order of each of these topics, because preceding one, the one following the preceding one, should feed into that statement. So having our mission statement second, probably our mission statement should be first. Then
Sure.
maybe a vision, then maybe the norms. I'm just spouting out now.
Sure.
And then everything feed down accordingly, because one feeds into the other.
Sure.
Especially if we're saying mission statement is,
Yeah,
we're sticking with that, and
that's
that's
top
not
dog,
changing,
right?
so then that one goes first, and then
Right.
we work through the rest.
Everything
in
feeds
order.
into that.
Oftentimes, the most granular at the board level here will be norms, actually.
Right.
So just
Yeah.
above, so the last thing you kind of review is how we're gonna function in this meeting right
Yeah.
now. But starting with your mission, your vision, your values,
Yeah.
your goals,
And
and
your
your
norms.
norms.
Yep.
So you're
Okay.
right, funneling it down
Yep.
from, from general to specific, I think would make sense. I can certainly adjust that as a start. So I think, again, there's a lot to chew on here, and there's people who are letting this marinate right now. Again, I knew I wasn't gonna have a 1-hour meeting and come out with a new mission statement, some galvanized core values, and, oh, we did it all at one table with no input from anyone. The reality is, we don't need to function that way. That would be terrible.
Yeah.
And that would be a huge mistake, because there's a lot of opportunities with people here to tap into their thoughts, their passion around Raymond, and that's how we're gonna spend this year, is figuring out how to get things to a spot where we feel like it's moving in the right direction.
As another way to say your goal number 2, the focus on systems and development of clarity in our systems, is that like establishing standard operating procedures or best practices or different things like that? I just wanna make sure that I'm
Absolutely.
understanding.
So what I'm noticing is, there are elements of things here like response to intervention.
Yeah.
There are elements of HR, there are elements of a handbook that exist, but it's not a super clear, relatable process. And it's not the easiest to find as the new person, especially when there's been turnover. Like, who had that doc? Who had that Google Doc? I asked Patty a lot of things like, do you have this? And thankfully, she has a lot of it, but not all of it. So if we can't find it, then
Completely, yeah.
we've got to retool that and reestablish it. So some of those is going to be really bringing clarity, because when there's not clarity, what's the opposite of that, right? Chaos. Because people don't know what's up. They don't know where I go for this, or what I do for that, or how we handle this, or how we handle that. And we don't need that in our system. We need that clarity.
Yeah.
So I can give you examples of those as the year goes on, to say, here's how our leadership team has established some better practices in HR, better
Yep.
practices in handbook, better practices in PD. And hopefully then they can also give you some, because we like to survey I like to survey our staff too. How's it going? What are you thinking? What are your ideas? Because they're the people that are doing the work.
Yeah, yep. And I think having that regular feedback loop will be super important, because we're gonna put in some practices that you're gonna learn and evolve and grow and adjust, but you're gonna need solution-oriented feedback to help that process and help the district move forward, right? So,
And these are bigger things. The interesting piece of this is, for me, it's not that I'm not about student learning, but I feel like if you put some of these things in place, you will get better student learning as an outcome. The effect of these practices is improved student outcomes.
Yep.
Versus targeting student outcomes first and not dealing with the bigger symptom
completely,
or the
yeah.
bigger issue.
Yeah.
So it felt counterintuitive to me, because my background is principal. It's my first superintendency, so I've got to put that lens on, okay, and we've got a leadership team that is coming together and going to be instilling best practice with teachers that are gonna be instilling best practice with teachers and coaching each other and working with each other and improving their practices. Because we have a good staff here who wants to get better. So,
Being a younger staff, a younger superintendent, young board.
I don't know if I'm gonna call myself young, but that's it. I got less hair every year.
Less experience at certain, yeah.
So this was, again, just this is the purpose of our workshop. It's to put information, out there. In the future, there will be things that I will, send out to you in terms of board workshop packet, materials, articles, things that you can,
Or homework,
peruse.
yeah.
Homework, if you will, that I think is really beneficial if you take a look before. But we had to rip off the Band-Aid and start the conversation,
Yeah.
related back to our retreat, which I felt was a really good use of time,
Yeah.
helping articulate, your role, my role, our role in this organization. So I appreciate your willingness to talk about it.
Appreciate your putting something on paper to get the conversation started and helping hold us accountable to, following through with what we talked about at the last workshop. So thank you, 4 days in.
4 days in.
Grabbing that wheel.
So there's this was part of our agenda for tonight.
Yep.
The other part of our agenda tonight was taking a look at policies and just how we have some policies that we need to update. And I met with Neola. Neola is the organization that we use to do policy revision. They are a high-power organization that we've worked with for a number of years. They referenced you and your apparent passion for reading policy, which is,
I don't know that I would
I don't know
call
if they put it there, but
I
they
sense
said,
some responsibility.
it's really interesting. So the reality is there are policies that I get updates on.
Call yourself a policy nerd.
I guess.
I did just give the board,
Like a dirt nerd?
so, hold on, before we move into policy talk, any more discussion about the document we just moved off of? Okay. So into this next topic, which is really just how do we handle policy, what I've discovered is that we have policies for the vast majority, 95% of the things we have to have policies for. Some of those policies are dated language, however. So they make recommendations to us in giant clusters, like, look at these 15 policies, and these are the most updated language, and guess what, it's always changing. So you're always gonna have a cluster, so they're always gonna have work, let's just be honest. They always have stuff they're doing to advocate for the policy changes. So Neola comes in twice a year, meets with us. We have a policy committee that Mike and Janelle currently sit on. We'll be establishing a regular policy read, first read, second read. According to our policy, we don't have to have a first read, second read. We choose to engage in that, which is best practice. Sometimes, though, you get policies that are coming in quick.
Yeah.
And so the most current one that's coming in is August 1st, Title IX is the policy that's coming down the pike. We're getting trained in that as a staff, as administration here, and it's a policy that it's July 1. August 1, that policy is in play. And so our board needs to do some quick work to get Title IX understood and, passed.
So when will we find out about it?
Tonight, I've got to read for you the overview for Title IX. And the good news is, we currently have a Title IX policy.
Okay.
We have, like I said, we have a vast majority of our policies in place. It's a matter of whether or not it's the most recent language. So to do Title IX policy, they have some pretty specific revisions that are going in that are important for the board to be aware of. And then at our next board meeting, which would be next week, we'll be looking to have a policy approval on Title IX, as well as a few other policies that they feel like we should be caught up to by August 1st. There's a whole other booking, though, of policies that we are
Yep.
needing to review this year. They weren't critical policies, so when Jim was here, he didn't push that through, and other things that he was working on that weren't related to policy. So he said, I'll leave that for you, and it was his gift to me that keeps on giving. So those,
He did outline those, though.
he did,
Okay.
yes. He did outline all of those.
Okay.
And Neola outlined all of those as well. So you all now have access to this document. You'll see my name is on there now. I was able to go in as super user and change that. But the idea here is that you can log in whenever you want at a certain level of viewing to these documents and check out policy. It's the most riveting thing you'll ever do. But the reality is, it's a good benchmark, though, when you have a question, how does this function, that will guide you through. And they're pretty simple reads, but some of them get a little linguistic at times. So they give me, in the case here, they give me special updates, an overview, and then policy updates that are pretty lengthy. And basically, this is the new language and drafting notes for the policy. Steve LaValle is our rep right now. It's changing over to a new person in the near future. He's retiring. So John Thompson, the former Whitefish Bay School superintendent, is going to be our rep. So John's coming on board. And so there's new policy language here that I wanted the board to be aware of. And the biggest piece with Title IX is related to the language around the process for complaints, for the process for people who want to report something. We have a current Title IX policy. Any complaints that have been filed before August 1st are handled in the old policy. Any complaints that handle after August 1st are the new policy. And really, a lot of the language relates back to, I'll pass this out. This is the overview.
Is this, so this is for board review. Typically, I feel like my history with this was a lot of the draft policies, like the differences from existing to new have been highlighted just to really hone in on what
Yes.
language is different. Is that,
And that will still be the case.
okay,
This particular one just came in hot July 1
Okay.
because of the timing of this with
Yeah.
Title 1, and Title 9 rather. Really, this one covers all forms of sex discrimination. So it does not just limit itself to the traditional language of sexual harassment. It's all forms of sex discrimination, not just sex-based harassment.
yeah,
So again, that's some of the differences in language are around the vocabulary and the definitions within the policy. The other piece of this is related to the process. We have to have an identified officer, and we have to have an identified second tier of investigation, and then you have a final appeal tier as well. So they've added tiers to the process here that are different from years past. So again, I'm giving this to you today as reading material. We need to have a discussion about this and either put into action the recommendation from NOAA is that we adopt a policy with new language. That would be something we would put to the board next week for consideration, and then we have to let them know when it's approved. Normally, we would not expedite like this, but given the nature of this and the timing of this, by August 1st, we need to have a policy adoption.
so I see that it also lists here all these other policies that are also updated. Does that mean we'd have to go through and reference these policies as well in
When
our
you-
reading assignment?
When you adopt the one Title IX, the others are adopted. So they're part of the Title IX policy. And I can find out if there's any other adoption needed, but as far as he told me the other day is we need to adopt Title IX, which is replacement policy 2266, and that would supersede any of the other policies.
This policy is put out by the state,
Federal government in this case.
Fed? Okay.
Department of Ed, Office of Civil Rights.
Oh.
So again, I'm giving this to you today as an overview. It's an important one to understand. We can certainly have discussion. I think, again, the board, I want to make sure that when you're looking through and passing policy, you understand what that policy is. And like I said, the nature of this particular policy being right now in July that we're talking about is given the fact that it's an August 1st integration into society. So we've got to have a process that's articulated and passed in place by August 1.
So we typically just copy it and paste it into our policy then?
They do all the replacement, so the company does all of the rearticulation in the documents, so this would move from my draft pile into, see this says for board review. This would go from the pile of there into actual policy material. So right now, it's not viewable because it's not a policy, it's a recommended policy, it's not viewable in our normal
Can
policies
you put
because.
that policy is dropped on? Just for everybody that's using it currently, or like to navigate, once you guys start logging in he just went to the policies drop down and looked at active, so this is everything that's actually active. Do you wanna just go through a quick little?
Yep, sure. So if anyone in our public here wants to look at policy, this is on our website and available. And it basically breaks it down by category. And it's, you know, pretty robust. Goes through all the specific, you know, categorical topics. So in the case of administration, these are the functions that we work within a board. It goes from everything as basic as what's our name? Literally, what's the name of the school district? All the way through, you know, this is a good one for board powers. What's the authority of the board? This is, you know, our electoral process. For example, I referenced this with our oath and our vacancies policy. Those are both referenced. I have those papers right here to make sure we follow the policy for those, so that we're in alignment with things. So again, these are pieces that, you know, in the past year, the recall policy was referenced in work. We've orientation of board members, which we're gonna be working through. How do you orient a new board member? There's a process for that as well. So you name it, it's in here. And I think it's a really important document to familiarize yourself with. So when you adopt a policy, you're adopting the language to be placed into this document that's then public.
I think it should be required reading for all the board members.
Absolutely.
Personally, I didn't go out and look around.
You're a new member, you now
But-
have access as of
Well,
July 1.
everybody has access to this.
Anyone can see this, but you have a different level of access that can also show you the drafts and the language and some of the behind the scenes pieces, for sure.
So if
And
you
then-
look, can you like shrink this section a bit? So like this is all kind of related to just like the board piece.
Oh, this is, yes.
Yes, so if you click out of bylaws, you can see then there's administration, like
Yep.
students, finance, and they all build on top of each other, right? So that
Right,
what the board has, and then you go, it's
Right.
like that top-down view, right,
Right.
of the broad to.
So most of these policies follow either federal or state requirements or state policies.
yes.
And some of them are based on just what in general is happening out there. Sometimes Neola will face something that was unique in another district in Wisconsin that, hey, it's probably a good thing to consider this as a topic for policy or not. And we may choose, in some cases, to implement or not, based on what.
Do we have any policies that are just basically for Raymond that are in there, or are they
We-
pretty much driven by state and fed requirements?
These are pretty well driven by state and fed, although there may be some Raymond-specific ones. I haven't dove in that
We
deep
really
to it,
can't
but-
change
that?
those policies from the state or federal.
No, well, you
They're
can,
verbatim, right?
yeah, they're pretty much recommendation from legal speak, but and attorneys, but I think, and court systems. But I feel like, you know, yes, there are boards that make policy on their own. It doesn't go well.
I'm gonna say
Because
that.
it's like, why are you making a policy that would go against the policies that, and I'm not suggesting that you're suggesting that, but that's where people go.
No, I'm
There's a
not.
lot, I mean, you can policy the world up if you want. I think the reality is, working within the frameworks that exist right now with the feds and the state
Right.
would be in the best interest of the board, for sure,
Okay.
yes. So, this is just an overview again for you to think about as you're working through, you know, from everything from use of the building to making sure we have different hygiene practices within our building. A lot of these were crafted and then tweaked around COVID time, because they saw there were some gaps in things
Right.
that came out.
Okay. All right.
So, the big one, for use of tobacco and nicotine, for example, this is updated in 2021 because vape devices and e-cigarettes are now a thing. So they've had to update, you know, and put the new language in for those devices. So from time to time, it is updated. And we meet as a policy committee a couple of times a year. Probably will be monthly for a little while there because we got quite a few to read through. First read, second read. And when we say first read, second read, the board's aware of what the committee's reading. The committee can recommend, and the board can approve the recommendation from committee.
A lot of times, like, when we go through that process, we'll say like, sometimes it's these were just naming convention updates, and there's a list of 20 policies that need to be updated because we're changing the language of district administrator to superintendent. Like, it would be simple, like, word swaps like that. And then like, hey, these ones we should stop and talk about so everybody understands that there's actual like content changes versus naming conventions or updating. So It will make more sense as we progress through it, but it is a good thing, and I agree with you. I highly encourage everybody to just get familiar with
And I
what's
can
out
invite
here.
you to one of our Neola policy meetings, just be a fly on the wall, and if you wanna start getting in the committee, you can,
Yeah.
this isn't a secret, you know? We also involve from time to time community members too that want read or staff that really enjoy wordsmithing and hearing those things, cause again, this isn't secret stuff we're putting together in the room, this is policy based on what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So, and Neola does an excellent job. Not everyone uses Neola. What I find is the people who don't get themselves in some pretty steep spots because they're not up to date.
Right.
But we're in need, because we had, a year of transition last year, and things that normally would be cadenced in October, November, December weren't
Nope.
cadenced.
Never go through.
Is that something we pay for?
We do. This is a service, I think it's about $3,000 a year for membership, which is money well spent. If you were to cast that out to attorney's fees, as we know from recent attorney's fees, they're not cheap. So to pay a membership into this consortium, I think is money well spent. And they can come out and do a full workshop on just policy. One of these could be a full workshop on just policy. We can have Steve come, and he would love to talk about policy for an hour, just give the
Yeah,
guy
we
a
need to
chance
put
to
a
talk.
timeline on it.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Oh, so, again, just for navigation, this is what everybody gets to see, but if you go back under that drop down of policies, then as a board member, once you log in with your credentials, then you get the access to the additional information, so that's like what's in draft. So if you're curious what the policy committee, or what Neola is gonna bring to the policy committee to review, you click on draft and you take a peek at what the proposed changes are. So again, just whether you're on the policy committee or not, you can still see what's being proposed out there.
To give you an idea, these are the policies we need to read in the first iteration. These are the policies we need to read in the second iteration. These should have been done last year. But we have policies for all of these.
Right.
There's just language changes. So don't think like we're discrepant in all the numbers.
Or-
We have
yeah.
policies for them.
Or there's something that was there that isn't necessary any longer, right? Like it's
Like
the-
rescind,
Right,
like they're taking away this particular.
we
or
combined it,
rescinding
we
this
already have
policy.
this covered somewhere else, and so it's duplicative of something else, so we
Correct.
don't need to have it.
So who's responsible to bring all these new policies and stuff to our attention?
The policy board, the policy committee, and myself.
And how do they find them? I mean, do they?
From Neola. Oh,
sends them?
Neola.
Yeah, Neola.
Neola sends them to us.
Yeah.
Yep. Neola represents 6 different states, or 8 different states now. They're in 8 different states, and they've got tens of thousands of clients.
All right.
And typically Neola reaches out to Mike and says like, hey, I got a packet for you. And then they work with, and he works with the policy committee to establish like
Gotta get the
what a
band back
timeline will
together,
look like.
yeah.
Yeah,
And again, it's a process. It's another system we've got to make sure we have in place. And then the committee typically, works with the board to help them understand anything in a sort of a discussion point, and then you approve.
Does Neola write these policies based on
Yes.
the Fed's comments, or do the Feds write the policy and Neola just lets us know about it?
And both. I would say Neola probably writes more of the policies because they have a certain cadence to their policy structure, but they're given the initial guidance from the feds, or from the state.
they take whatever is being passed at that level, whether it's state or fed, and then apply it back into our existing, or in this case, it looks like kind of replacing it.
The other piece is we do have access to additional things like employee handbooks. If you want to see what their recommended handbook looks like, this is a starting point for us. So we can say, how does ours compare to the standard? So they've set the standard for 2023 handbooks based on what the state, we turn our handbooks in to Neola, and they can help say, this is something that makes sense, this is something that.
Oh, they fully review it?
They can.
No.
It's a good, it's a
For
great
an extra
resource.
fee, or for what?
Yeah.
I'm finding those pieces out.
Okay,
And again, I think it might be money well spent though, because I think our handbook just needs some improvement there too. I think it's very, very long-winded.
it is very long.
But I often have said that I think sometimes the size of your handbook, length of your handbook, is based off of the trust level with the staff and the community. And so the bigger, sometimes it's lacking
Yeah.
some trust. And I feel like we can get back to a spot where there's trust and integrity there.
Yep.
You know, but it's gonna take some time and some collaboration, because teachers need to have a voice in what makes sense in our handbook. We had the really tricky handbook when we had the reduction of staff. There was the language that mentioned
Yeah,
you have to ask the staff if they
if
would
there's
like
anybody
to be
volunteering, yeah.
reduced.
Mhm.
That's language that is not used anymore, but it was in our handbook. And it made for, quite frankly, I wasn't there, but probably a pretty awkward staff meeting.
sure.
It just could have been avoided, but it was in our handbook,
Now,
so,
we just approved the 2024-25 handbook at
Yes.
our last meeting. So the intention is 2024 handbook stays in place while we outline what future opportunities would be for the 25-26, and you'll help establish what that timeline and
yes.
process is.
Yeah, we are not going back and changing the handbook that's in place that was approved.
Just approved.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's also a handbook as part of our policy, an HR governance committee. We've got the chance for people to work on that too, so,
Are there two handbooks, an employee handbook and a student handbook?
yes.
Okay.
Typically, the board doesn't approve student handbooks necessarily.
Okay.
You know, it's an information. I've had districts that have said, we want to see it, we want to approve it. We have others that'll just say, we trust the fact that the administration is making recommendations. I think it's probably good practice to approve both. Because you want, if you're going to be doing things with kids and, you know, searches and seizures or things of that nature, you want to make sure you've got it covered.
Yeah, for sure.
You know. And to be honest, the student handbook is only referenced when there's a problem. And I've had, you know, having come off of just being a high school principal, I've had a few times the handbook was thrown around, usually related to, you know, academic eligibility or suspensions,
Yep.
so. So this is just a little, again, I wanted to put the policy piece in your lap. For those of you who thought this was a rubber stamp position, it is not. There's a lot to learn, and I'm looking forward to learning it with you. So this is just part of the policy piece. You're not in yet because you weren't official till 2 hours ago. You'll get a login for this as well, for your policy piece. And then everybody else, Mike, I updated yours, and you already had your access. So your gold card
Yeah.
was already in there. And then we'll set up a time for Steve. He said he would love to come back this fall and just have a chance to talk with the board.
Yeah.
And I said, great, we have a new workshop model, you have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So lots going on. Any other questions about policy? That's why I wanted it to be listed here as yes. The context around this particular policy is real because the timing is important because of August 1st implementation, but then bigger than that, the number 1, number 2 volume, these that each have quite a few language changes or vocabulary changes need to be addressed by policy committee, first read, and then second read comes to board. So
And we have a timeline.
Yeah.
that's gonna be, that is, our goal is this year. He said this year, this is another one of those, like, nothing is pants on fire at this point except the Title IX is a critical one. But the others will be, he said, we kind of chew it up like a third, and a third. So we do volume. He said there's even actually volume 33, number 2 now out. It's coming out next week.
So when you say this year, are you talking by December, or are you talking in the
Fiscal year, so
year?
school year, I speak in school term. So by June 30th. That'd be
That's our
great.
fiscal year, June 30th, July 1st.
July 1 to June 30th is our fiscal year.
Got it.
Good place to catch up this year and stuff.
We got a little bit of catch up to do, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to get the board aware and up to speed. So,
Absolutely.
any other questions about what we had set out to do tonight, which is really review the mission, establish core values, establish board norms, discuss board and leadership goals, and policy review discussion.
Good information.
So careful what you wish for. There's a lot to dive into, but I appreciate you stepping into the role and learning.
No, once we get it done, it's done.
Right, right. Now, well, policy.
Review it every year, but you're at least good for a year.
You at least, you have a better understanding of it. And
I
usually-
mean, it's kind of a like always ongoing thing. Like you usually, it's not like
Fluid
you said. A lot of times there's like a fall and a spring activity, but then there might be some. It could be that something happens in a staff member, or community member raises a concern with a policy and triggers a review of it. So it's kind of like an always living.
I would liken it to mowing your grass.
Yeah.
No one really likes to do it, but they gotta do it. And
Have
it
somebody
still
else
keeps
do it.
growing.
I
So,
actually like, I have one of the kids do it, so I don't.
That's right.
really know.
I gotta get a good ride-on mower.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
set and forget. No, it's really like it's a gardening piece where you grow it, things change. You know, there are policies that are consolidated and thrown out, so it's
Yeah.
not just add all the time.
Oh.
But, it's part of the process. But we do have,
Glad you got that.
Yeah.
well, that's it, well, just like you're on facilities.
Yeah.
And I don't know that she wants to be in the room when we're going through systems like that. So again, those are part of the committees as well. So we'll go through the process of setting up those in-between committee meetings. So, and then we have an HR, committee as well, personnel
Personnel committee.
committee, which usually does the handbooks. So personnel. There will be 2 recommendations made at the 15th meeting. So you'll come with some recommendations next week for that. It'll be on the agenda for new hires. So lots of ongoing pieces.
Yeah, we have to, I mean, eventually figure out the new, make sure we're good on committee structure with Amanda's departure and Patty's
Yes.
arrival.
We can review that when we set up the agenda. Okay, so hearing no other comment around the board workshop topics for tonight, I will need a motion to adjourn.
Do we?
Oh, my
No,
God.
we
Not taking any
No, we
action.
didn't, because we didn't have any action. You can't take action. You can't
Yep.
adjourn,
It's
I'm
just
just
a
gonna
workshop.
leave.
just a workshop. Just walk out.
We can just go home
It's a
now.
gap session.
There we go. Well, thank you for coming.
Real quick, I know we just started getting into the habit of the meetings, being put on our calendars. And that was, I think, one of our opportunities for tonight. Do we think we can get, now that we're having these first and third Mondays, that we'll have the Google Calendar
Yes,
invite put out there?
I'll put it on
So we
tomorrow.
don't,
Update the calendar?
yeah.
Yeah, so it
Google
reminds
Calendar
you,
invite, and then
so
I
it
will,
reminds you
Yeah,
to be here?
yeah.
Okay.
and I will
Put
send,
a notification.
That stupid house is 7:24, it seems like.
I will put out a notification reminder as well.
Probably.
So Ed, I can put one out that
I don't know how you.
reminds you in an hour,
I just-
10
yeah,
minutes,
I'll be there.
when you're driving in the car, it vibrates in your
Yeah,
pocket.
put some notifications on it.
That'd be great.
Leave
So,
your house.
First and third, though, first and third.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
all right.
I just pay attention in the meeting,
Unless it changes.
in the meeting.
Unless it changes. We are gonna try to get into a regular cadence. We are gonna try 6:30. Sometimes he's special. Tonight we had a 5:30, so trying to, wait, was it 6 o'clock? 6 or 6:30? 6? Thank you.
Is it like Labor Day?
All right.
If it ends up being the first Monday,
I'm
then
still
we'll-
trying to work.
I think you've been riding it a lot.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Break.
you.
There we go.
No, we can.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay. I mean, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
It's not a very.
It does me, because my dog